There is one moment that strikes fear into every narcissist. The day they realize you simply don't care anymore. For so long, they've lived off your reactions, your love, your pain, your arguments, even your tears. But when you reach the point of indifference, psychologists explain that it delivers a devastating blow to their ego. To a narcissist, nothing is more unbearable than your silence. At first, they don't believe it. Narcissists are confident in their ability to control you, so when you show no reaction, they assume you're pretending. Psychologists say denial is their first defense. They convince themselves you'll come back, that this phase won't last. But as days pass and your indifference continues, the cracks in their illusion begin to grow. When denial fades, anger follows. Narcissists hate losing control, and your indifference feels like rejection. Psychologists describe this as a narcissistic injury. Your calm response threatens their identity. They may lash out with insults, accusations, or sudden rage. But the irony is these outbursts only prove how much your indifference hurts them, even if they pretend otherwise. Next comes the performance. Narcissists will put on a show to regain your attention. They might flaunt new relationships, post dramatic updates, or act happier than ever. Psychologists explain that this isn't real happiness, it's bait. They hope your indifference cracks when you see them moving on. But when you don't react, the act backfires, leaving them more unsettled than before. They may then try the hoovering technique. Sweet messages, fake apologies, or sudden nostalgia flood in. Psychologists emphasize that these aren't genuine attempts at reconciliation. They were strategies to pull you back into caring. But your indifference dismantles these tactics. Each unanswered text or ignored call is like another nail in the coffin of their control. When hoovering fails, they switch to victimhood. Narcissists might say, "I can't believe you'd abandon me," or "You were the only one who ever cared." Psychologists highlight that this manipulation aims to guilt you into caring again. But when you stay detached, the tactic loses power. Their mask of innocence shatters, revealing their desperation underneath. Indifference also exposes their deepest insecurity: irrelevance. Narcissists need to feel important, to occupy space in your thoughts. Psychologists explain that when you no longer think about them, they feel invisible. This invisibility terrifies them, because it proves their greatest fear true. They were never as powerful as they believed. As you continue not to care, they spiral into confusion. Psychologists describe this stage as disorientation. They've always known how to provoke reactions, but your detachment rewrites the script. Without your energy fueling them, they lose balance. Every silence, every ignored attempt becomes a mirror reflecting their weakness, something they've spent a lifetime trying to hide. Some narcissists will escalate with smear campaigns. They tell others you're cold, heartless, or even unstable. Psychologists explain this is projection. They can't accept that you stopped caring, so they try to destroy your image. But ironically, the smear campaign only highlights their obsession with you, proving to others that they're the one who can't let go. And here's the real kicker. Your indifference forces them to face themselves. For years, they've avoided the truth of their emptiness by feeding on your emotions. Psychologists remind us that when you stop caring, they lose their favorite distraction. Left alone with their own insecurities, the narcissist crumbles. Your indifference becomes their ultimate punishment. When you no longer care, narcissists feel like they've lost their script. Psychologists explain that they thrive on predictable reactions, anger, sadness, or pleading. But indifference gives them nothing to work with. This lack of response is disarming. It's like trying to play chess with someone who refuses to move a single piece. The silence becomes unbearable because it strips them of control. They often resort to extreme measures to provoke you. Psychologists describe how narcissists might stage crises, exaggerate illnesses, or create drama just to pull you back in. But when you don't respond, it highlights how powerless they've become. Your refusal to care is louder than any outburst they create. It forces them to confront the truth. Their grip on you is gone. Over time, your indifference becomes a mirror reflecting their failures. Narcissists rely on external validation because inside, they feel hollow. Psychologists note that when you stop providing attention, they're left with nothing but their own emptiness. This self-reflection is painful, so they scramble for distractions. But no matter what they try, the silence follows them everywhere. Some narcissists try to replace you quickly, rushing into new relationships. Psychologists call this seeking new supply. They hope it will numb the pain of your indifference. But deep down, every new partner is compared to you. Your refusal to care becomes haunting, because it proves that while they can find replacements, they can't erase the regret of losing someone who stopped caring. When replacements fail, envy kicks in. Psychologists explain that seeing you happy, peaceful, or successful without them fuels jealousy. They may hate that your life continues while theirs feels stagnant. This envy becomes their silent punishment. Your indifference allows you to move forward while they remain stuck, consumed by bitterness they can't shake. The longer your indifference lasts, the more their anger shifts inward. Narcissists rarely admit it, but psychologists emphasize that they sometimes feel regret. They realize their actions drove you to this point. But instead of changing, they mask regret with arrogance or blame. This internal conflict eats at them, because they know the truth even if they never say it aloud. Your indifference also dismantles their fantasy of superiority. Narcissists live with the belief that no one can resist them. But when you no longer care, it proves otherwise. Psychologists highlight that this cracks their identity, leaving them feeling ordinary and replaceable. For someone who built their world on the illusion of being special, this reality is devastating. They may try one last Hoover attempt, promising change, love, or even commitment. Psychologists say this is a desperate act, not a genuine transformation. But your indifference makes these words meaningless. Without emotional fuel, their promises sound hollow. It hurts them because they realize the tricks that once worked no longer have any power over you. Indifference also destroys their sense of timing. Narcissists rely on cycles of push and pull. But when you stop caring, the cycle ends. Psychologists explain that the uncertainty of not knowing when or if you'll ever respond drives them crazy. They're left waiting, hoping and obsessing over someone who no longer thinks of them. And here's the beauty. Your indifference frees you while trapping them. Psychologists remind us that narcissists are addicted to control. When you no longer provide it, they're left enslaved to their own emptiness. They feel powerless, irrelevant, and forgotten. Meanwhile, your silence becomes the loudest declaration of freedom, a language they can't manipulate. As time goes on, narcissists may cycle through different masks to win you back. One day they'll act angry, the next they'll act loving, and later they'll play the victim. Psychologists explain that this shifting persona is a survival tactic, but when you don't care, every mask slips quickly. They're left exposed as someone who can't maintain their facade. Indifference also erases their ability to rewrite history. Narcissists love gaslighting, making you question your memory. But when you don't care, gaslighting loses its power. Psychologists say indifference robs them of their favorite weapon. They can twist stories all they want, but your lack of interest makes their efforts pointless. That helplessness stings more than any confrontation. Some narcissists may retreat into self-pity. Psychologists describe how they convince themselves they're the true victim. They'll tell others, "I gave everything, and they just stopped caring." But even in self-pity, they can't escape the truth. Your indifference wasn't sudden. It was built over time by their own choices. This realization cuts deeper than any rejection. Narcissists also struggle with jealousy when they see you giving your energy to others. Psychologists emphasize that your ability to laugh, love, and connect again feels like betrayal to them. But it's not betrayal. It's freedom. Watching you invest in healthier relationships is proof that you don't need them anymore, and that truth is unbearable for their fragile ego. Indifference forces them into the very thing they fear most: insignificance. Narcissists live to be the center of attention, but psychologists highlight that when you stop caring, you erase them from your story. They can scream, beg, or rage, but your silence confirms they no longer matter. And that is the deepest cut of all. In some cases, narcissists attempt revenge. Psychologists explain that they may try to sabotage your happiness out of spite. But here's the hook. Revenge fails when you don't care. Every attempt to hurt you fizzles in the face of indifference. The energy they waste only highlights how little space they take up in your life now. Your indifference also exposes how shallow their connections are. Psychologists remind us that narcissists don't build genuine intimacy. So when you stop caring, they lose one of the few real bonds they had. The contrast between your silence and the fake attention they receive elsewhere deepens their regret. It shows them what they lost and what they can't replace. They may spiral into obsession. Psychologists note that narcissists replay memories, stalking your social media, and searching for clues that you still care. But every unanswered message and every sign of your peace reminds them that their obsession is one-sided. This torment grows because they crave attention that you refuse to give. Indifference also reveals their lack of growth. Psychologists emphasize that while you heal and evolve, narcissists stay stuck in old patterns. Your progress becomes a painful mirror, showing them the difference between a survivor and someone trapped in their own games. The gap widens over time, and they regret losing the chance to grow with you. And here's the lasting truth. When a narcissist realizes you don't care anymore, they're left powerless. They may rage, manipulate, or seek replacements, but none of it heals their emptiness. Your indifference is the one response they can't control, and that makes it their ultimate defeat. For them, it's torment. For you, it's liberation. When you no longer care, narcissists face a terrifying silence. Psychologists say that silence works like a mirror. It reflects back all the insecurities they've buried. With no drama, no conflict, and no reaction, they're forced to sit with themselves. For people who've spent their lives avoiding self-awareness, this is pure torture. They can't escape the emptiness that your indifference uncovers. They may try to provoke you by flaunting achievements or pretending to be happier than ever. But psychologists highlight that this performance is fragile. When you don't acknowledge their act, it collapses under its own weight. They're reminded that validation from you was their prize. Without it, their staged success feels meaningless, leaving them hollow behind the mask. Narcissists also struggle with the loss of predictability. Psychologists explain that they rely on patterns, knowing you'll cry, argue, or fight for them. But when you stop caring, the script is broken. They're left scrambling, unable to control the narrative. This unpredictability terrifies them because it reveals how little power they actually have over you. Indifference exposes their dependency. For years, they convinced themselves that you depended on them. But psychologists note the truth. It was always the other way around. They needed your attention, love, and loyalty to feel alive. When you stop caring, they see the reality. They were far more dependent on you than you ever were on them. The longer you remain indifferent, the more regret grows. Psychologists emphasize that narcissists rarely admit regret, but it eats at them privately. They recall the times you stood by them, defended them, or gave them love no one else would. Losing that loyalty because they pushed you too far becomes a wound they can easily hide from themselves. Some narcissists collapse inward. Psychologists call this a narcissistic injury spiraling into collapse. They may withdraw, isolate, or even sink into depression. Without your care to prop up their ego, they feel exposed and fragile. For someone who built their identity on control, this collapse is devastating, proving just how much your indifference shattered them. Others distract themselves with new supply. But psychologists explain that every new relationship is haunted by your absence. They compare, measure, and realize the emptiness isn't filled. New supply is temporary. Your indifference is permanent. That permanence terrifies them, because it proves that no matter who comes next, the wound of your detachment won't heal. Your indifference also reveals their inability to change. Psychologists highlight that while you grow, heal, and find peace, they stay locked in the same cycles. Watching you evolve while they stagnate intensifies their pain. They regret losing the chance to change with you, but pride prevents them from admitting it, leaving them trapped in bitterness. Narcissists may tell themselves they don't care either, But psychologists note this is only denial. If they truly didn't care, they wouldn't try so hard to get a reaction. Their obsessive attempts to provoke you reveal the opposite. They care too much about your indifference. The irony is sharp. The more they deny, the more they reveal. Your refusal to engage also strips away their power to gaslight. Psychologists remind us that gaslighting only works if you react. When you no longer care about their twisted stories, their lies lose impact. This destroys their illusion of control. Because manipulation without response is like shouting into a void. They're left frustrated and powerless. Some narcissists spiral into envy when they see you invest your energy in others. Psychologists explain that they want to remain your primary focus forever. But when you care about your own life, friends, or passions, they feel replaced. This envy becomes a silent torment because it shows them they lost the privilege of your attention. Indifference also dismantles their fantasy of being unforgettable. Narcissists pride themselves on leaving a mark, but when you show no emotion, you prove that they can, in fact, be forgotten. Psychologists note this realization is crushing. To them, being irrelevant feels worse than hate. Hate keeps them alive in your mind. Indifference erases them completely. They may attempt to stage a comeback, suddenly appearing as if they've changed. Psychologists stress that this transformation is usually temporary, designed to reel you back. But when you don't care, their act falls apart quickly. The rejection is brutal because it shows that even their most polished performance can resurrect the bond they destroyed. Over time, your indifference forces them to see the consequences of their actions. Psychologists emphasize that narcissists live avoiding accountability, but your silence is accountability itself. It says, "I won't play anymore." That truth is unavoidable. Every day you don't care becomes a reminder that they pushed too far, and now the damage is irreversible. Some narcissists sink into despair when they realize you've built peace without them. Psychologists say they never expected you to survive alone, let alone thrive. Seeing you happy, healed, and free highlights their own chaos. The comparison is painful because it proves you were never the weak one. They were. Your indifference makes that truth undeniable. They may stalk your progress, obsessively checking to see if you ever mention them. Psychologists note that this obsession grows precisely because you don't care. Your silence creates mystery, and mystery fuels their anxiety. They long for your validation, but the absence gnaws at them, keeping the wound of your indifference fresh. Your indifference also reveals their failure at the deepest level. Psychologists remind us that narcissists enter relationships to secure endless admiration. But when you stop caring, it exposes that they failed at the very thing they wanted most. This failure crushes their ego, because it shows they couldn't keep control over someone who once gave them everything. In quiet moments, regret overwhelms them. Psychologists explain that narcissists remember the kindness you showed, the patience you gave, and the love they squandered. They may never admit it, but your indifference forces them to face what they lost. The haunting question remains, what if I hadn't pushed them away? That regret lingers like a shadow. And here's the twist. While they crumble under your indifference, you rise. Psychologists emphasize that choosing not to care isn't cruelty, it's healing. You reclaim your power, your time, and your peace. Your silence speaks louder than anger ever could. And the narcissist, left behind in their own emptiness, becomes a prisoner of the regret they created. So what happens when a narcissist realizes you don't care anymore? They collapse, rage, deny, and regret, but nothing fills the void. Your indifference is the one truth they cannot escape. For them, it's torment. For you, it's freedom. And that freedom is the final chapter in a story they thought they controlled, but you ended with quiet strength.